Many people have been asking for me to tackle this IP for a long time because I do Aliens and I do Predator. And I hadn't done EVP for a long time because a lot of it's very hard to get now. In fact, almost all of it, comic book wise, is very hard to get. Uh, Unlike Aliens and Predator, which basically have everything Dark Horse ever produced, with the exception of a handful of stories, has been put in omnibus form. AVP has been left alone, and I can only speculate it's due to the films. And right off the bat, I just want to throw this out there when it comes to AVP as a property. The films are the worst aspects of the whole IP, by far. AVP kind of was always treated with more respect than either Aliens or especially Predator. If I had to rank these three IPs, AVP would be number one, consistently number one. Not everything's great, and I'm not going to say that about any of these IPs. There's a lot of crap. With AVP, there's a lot less of everything, period, so there's just a little more quality control. Aliens would be below this, where Aliens, once the Dark Horse established the the comic, it was immediately contradicted by Alien 3, and then it was starting to flounder right before Alien 3, and that kind of put it in a tailspin, and we'll see that soon enough in my Aliens reviews. And Predator stagnated simply because Predator 3, as they wanted it in the late 90s, never came to fruition. So there was a lot of just hurry up and wait with Predator. And Predator has been stale pretty much since Predator 2. Sure, you get your Predators, which is okay. And Badlands is a step in the right direction for taking it into a new era, which Predators and IP needs. AVP had the misfortune of two god awful films. I will refrain from going into deep reviews on these, but if you followed my channel, you know that I I don't look at these films favorably. There are worse movies. The Predator, I think, is worse than either AVP film, and people get upset when I say that, but that film is just the worst. AVPR is the second worst of both Aliens and Predators as IPs, and then AVP is probably third. It resembles a movie. AVPR does not resemble a movie. It's just I don't know what they were trying to go for except for being edge lords. But anyway, when Predator 2 came out and the Xenomorph skull was up in the trophy room at the end of that film, it was a matter of time before Dark Horse, that owned both properties for their comic books, would throw out a comic. And what they did was a three-part Dark Horse Presents story that happens in Dark Horse Presents issues 34 through 36, which would then spin off into Aliens vs. Predator issues 1 through 5, with those three Dark Horse Presents stories. It's really one story connecting into it like an issue 0 later. What is this story about? Well, a bunch of Yautja, which this term does come from this, but not this comic, rather the Stephanie Perry novelization Prey later. A group of Yautja are, they're seeding the planet Ryushi. Ryushi is a colony world they use to raise these weird, like, rhinos that they use for food because humanity is just depleting planets left and right of resources. So they're basically rhino cattle. It's a rhino cattle colony, and they call it the Company, but it is, I think, supposed to be Weyland-Yutani. They never call it by that name. In fact, Weyland-Yutani really wasn't a term yet in this timeline. You gotta understand this comic, the single issues came out in 1990. So Predator 2 had just come out when this started happening. And we hadn't gotten the special edition of Aliens, which I believe is the first time they refer to the company as Weyland-Yutani. I don't think they refer to it as that in the theatrical cut of Aliens. I know for sure you see the logos in the special edition. Our protagonist, she's running this colony. She's new to running this colony. Her name's Machiko. And no one really likes her because she's kind of a hard ass. She's all business. And there's kind of... the company and the ranchers don't get along. And while all this strife is going on, we have the Yautja are planning their... every so often they seed this planet. I believe it's every 100 years, similar to the first AVP film, where they just drop a bunch of ovomorphs out of a ship to basically breed a bunch of xenomorphs in random places on this planet. Then they go and hunt as a group, kill all the xenomorphs, and go home with a bunch of trophies. That is the goal. Unfortunately, the doctor for the colony, well, one of the two doctors, accidentally flies a flying motorcycle into the Yautja ship, causing a big old explosion and capturing our main protagonist, Yautja, who isn't named here except for they call him like Broken Tusk. In the novel, his name is Dashende. So I often think of him as Dashende because of the novelization rather than Broken Tusk. And so this Yautja is captured, and the other ones just start running rampant, killing people because I guess they didn't scan for people, or they just don't care. There is an explanation in the novelization, but I'm not going to get into that because I do plan to review the novelization on its own. So, the Yautja are running loose. They're fighting with the ranchers and other colonists, killing indiscriminately. Meanwhile, some of these rhinoceros cattle, they have names. I just don't remember them. One of them gives birth to a queen and starts a full-on nest in the escape ship. And basically, after that, all hell breaks loose, and Machiko has to try to save everyone. What did I think of the original Aliens vs. Predator? I think it's very good. It is Randy Stradley's second to best work. It does not beat Crimson Empire. Crimson Empire is the best thing that Randy Stradley ever wrote. But this is a close second. Definitely beats out his Crimson Empire sequels. I like that both... It is... Aliens vs. Predator takes its time establishing things. I like it's a 5-issue mini. Because if this had been done like a decade prior, it would have been a 2 to 3. And it would have been just a mess. Or any other comic company wouldn't have handled these IPs with this much respect. I've been reading, again, a lot of the Top Cow Tomb Raider comics, which are always very rushed. And it's nice to have a story like this where they take their... the author takes his time and establishes all these factions. And as much as you can establish xenomorphs, they're big bugs. And when they aren't held in check, they run amok. And they just conquer planets and stuff. They're chaos creatures. They have hive mind. They're bugs. And then the Yautja are treated as very intelligent hunters. And then the humans are caught in the middle. This is something that really, neither AVP film ever did well. The first one attempts to do it, whereas the second one doesn't really try to do anything other than be gross and have some of the most unlikable characters ever put in a movie. So it's nice. I like Machiko. She is a reoccurring character. Periodically, she does come back in things, and that's nice. She's like one of the few characters in either of these, in any of these like IPs that comes back that you want to see come back. I know that we have in the Aliens IP, well, Alien IP, because they call it Alien now. They, you have like your Amanda Ripley's and Zula Hendrix's, and of course May, the most important character ever, May, daughter of the alien equivalent of Ahsoka. But none of these feel nearly as like rewarding as Machiko. I guess Amanda Ripley's the one that comes the closest to having a similar story, but that it's all, she's also hampered by the fact that um she's Ellen Ripley's daughter. It's just like a parent of a child of so and so, blah blah blah, and that, I don't know. It just doesn't. It rubs me as disingenuous in a lot of ways. Whereas Chico's the first one that really comes back that isn't like a movie character. I'm not going to count Hicks and Newt or Wilkes and Billy, which are Hicks and Newt, because they're movie characters. Yeah, we had John Schaefer, but at this point, John Schaefer wasn't utilized the way that she's being utilized. So I don't know. That's a whole nother video discussing comparing these recurring characters together and doing like a tier list. That sounds fun, but I should get into my ranking or rating for this comic series. So I give it a good 5 out of 5. It's pretty great. It's a great way to get into either IP. In fact, rather than reading any Aliens or Predator comics, I picked this up at a Barnes & Noble many years ago. This isn't my original copy that burned in a fire, but I recently found this, actually like about a month ago. I found this one. And I read the crap out of this till the pages came out. I love just about every story in this one. There's a couple, specifically one of them's kind of strange, but I really enjoyed this and then its subsequent sequel, War, quite a bit. Also, I have this. This was a cool one they did back in the 2010s. They did the 30th anniversary hardcovers. They did 2 Aliens, a Terminator, a Predator, and they did this one. This collects the original comic as well as War Part 1. Not sure what that means. Why they call it War Part 1 if it only collected part of it. Because War is kind of a sequel to Aliens Frenzy / Berserker, depending on what edition you have, because it has 2 titles. But we'll get to that much later. For now, I highly recommend this. But where do you read this? Because these are really hard to get. I mean, this is probably your best bet if you just want the initial Randy Stradley stories. This is probably your best bet. Or if you want the novelization, you can get the complete AVP omnibus from Titan Books. That's just Steve and Stephanie Perry's novelizations of both that and War, as well as another book, because War took a long time to come out, so they actually wrote their own original sequel, which I'll be covering all those on the channel coming up. Don't worry. This, you can find a digital version on Internet Archive. Normally, I don't try to promote things like that. As much as I like Internet Archive, I actually like it quite a bit, especially with like rare YA books, where YA books only really, especially if they're IP books, only get printed once or maybe if you're lucky twice, and they're really hard to get. Like a lot of the young Indiana Jones books, like YA books, are on there. I think they have some Star Wars stuff. But if you have like lost comics, oftentimes they end up on there. And both they did two Aliens versus Predator Dark Horse omnibuses, and they're both on there as far as last I checked. And I haven't paged through the second one yet, but the first one, most of the scans are pretty good on there. You can also track down the single issues for this first story. As it went on, the harder it is to get a lot of this AVP stuff. Because thanks to the movies, things didn't get reprinted really afterwards. Even though they did these two omnibuses, like things like Thrill of the Hunt or Three Worlds War only got collected once, and then forgotten, and it's a real shame. And if anything comes from this, I hope like maybe Marvel sees this and says, "Oh, there's a market for an AVP omnibus." Because here's the thing: Dark Horse never. They didn't take the same care that they do with that Marvel does with their, especially their Alien stuff. Predator stuff to a certain extent, simply two stories were left out due to Marvel editorial politics more than anything else. And then, of course, the Fire and Stone and Life and Death events have never been reprinted under Marvel. And I think it has to do with AVP. I think they think it's not going to make money, but Predator Badlands was borderline an AVP film. It had Weyland-Yutani in it. It had synthetics. It's in the timeline closer to Alien than Predator. So it was worth... I think it's the time to bring out at least one omnibus. Should be two, with two separate omnibuses for Fire and Stone and Life and Death. The secondhand market for all of these things is getting outrageous. And it's very hard to get these. But I think now is the time to really start... For those of you who review things that have these and can read them, highly recommend throwing reviews out for these. So we can get Marvel to reprint some stuff. I mean, we did get an AVP novel called Rift War a few years ago, and we got like a short story collection from Titan Books, but we haven't gotten anything Marvel, and I think it's a shame. I don't want Aliens versus Avengers. I want Aliens versus Predator. And if you don't want to do new stuff, just reprint the old stuff like you're doing with all the Star Wars stuff. Like, please. It's worth your time to check out. I think it sold really well. I know a lot of people that would line up and buy these omnibuses or do some epic collections and test the water that way. I'd be picking them up, even though I have a lot of them. I'd still pick up those epic collections. It's going to be a good way to get things, especially like digitally. The epic collections are pretty awesome. So, anyway, have a nice day. Editor Jeremy here. I totally forgot about part of this story. So a year later, when Dark Horse released the Dark Horse Presents 5th Anniversary Special, and in it we get an epilogue with our main character from the original AVP story. She's been living in isolation for about 2 years, and she comes across Yautja from the same tribe as Dashende. And is she going to join them? Are they going to kill her? What's the deal? It's not much. I thought it was part of the last issue of this series as a little epilogue. Because it is written by Randy Stradley and has the same art. But no, it's its own thing. She's the only one that lives on Ryushi now. The colony has been disbanded after what happened in the main comic. So, yeah, it's a neat little epilogue, and it's setting up things to come, which I do like. What would I rank it? Good 5 out of 5. Same as the rest of these issues. There's not much to add in there. So, anyway, it's a little tidbit extra for this very long review. I hope you enjoy it, and have a nice day.